Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Sorry, kind of had a brain fart there. Regardless, obviously this episode we kind of following around Nikola Tesla, so that's really interesting. I liked his relationship with Dorothy Scarrett because it's interesting because like obviously like Nikola has like this and it's so interesting because like it is like that thing of like I appreciate learning history that like I'm slightly familiar with, but at the same time not knowing a lot. Like I so relate it to Graham because at the same time you kind of like at the beginning when like you have Yaz, Ryan, and Graham being like, who's Nikola Tesla? Like, yeah, I guess it's one of those things of like, well, it might just be like, because I guess that's kind of an American thing, British history, you probably wouldn't know about it too much, but I assume you still would because it's just like the impact that Nikola Tesla had. But at the same time, it's just thinking like, yeah, I say that, but even I don't really know. And I love the entire time Graham is acting, and they're like, oh yeah, he's a big inventor and stuff like that. And Yaz is like, yeah, what do you make? And he's like, the whatchamacallit. Go on, Doc. Tell him. I love Graham the entire episode. It's like, oh, this thing, it's a bug. Yeah, a bug. That's what I thought the moment I saw it. I love Graham. It's just kind of just, I felt like he was a little sassy this episode, but regardless, Nikola and Dorothy end up crossing paths with the Doctor because someone's trying to kill him. Well, it's kind of sad too because at first, like the inventions he's trying to make, obviously because there's word about like, oh yeah, like there's a signal from Mars, which he brings up, which Dorothy was like, no, because she's trying to keep all his insane ideas kind of to himself and like do the work that is here in magical and like do that, but don't go too far out because people won't be an investor, and like a lot of people who could be investors kind of walk away. But despite all that, and I think it's kind of a beautiful element to this episode that despite people not necessarily having your vision, you keep doing you. And I think that's kind of a beautiful lesson to take from this. It's like maybe people will never see things exactly the way you do, but all you can do is be true to yourself, be true to your vision, and I think that's a beautiful message in its own. But obviously, they end up finding like this special orb. I wasn't really sure what the like nature of this episode was going to be, like how it was actually going to go down and stuff like that. But obviously, the Doctor coming in, they're getting onto a train and everything. And I love her being like, "Oh, you're Nikola Tesla." She's like, "Oh, you're a big fat liar." And he's like, "Excuse me." She kept being like, "Why am I a liar?" Because obviously, it's like there's something after us, and you know why, but you're not telling us. And I love that whole thing of like. Because obviously for her, like she's a big fan and everything, but like the creature that's after him, I was like, oh, that's so interesting because it looks like, it's charging this electricity in its hands and its eyes. But that was also something too. I kind of felt bad because Tesla was being blamed for like, oh, someone at dying because of his invention and stuff like that. He's like, no, the current wouldn't be enough to kill anyone, but no one wants to listen because they're still trying to, blame him. But obviously Dorothy's trying to like, hey, like kind of help with whatever way you can with the invention. Just kind of check things out to make sure that things aren't, that way you can prove to people that, your invention had no reasoning, there being no issues. But I'm going to be skipping around a little bit, but an element to this episode I really like too is the fact is that the Doctor and Tesla get along so smashingly. Like the fact of the matter is there is some kinship in that I like because he sees her sonic screwdriver and he's like, oh, this is something of your own invention? She's like, yeah, I made it from spoons and stuff. Like he's like, I knew it the moment I saw you. He's like, I knew you were an inventor like me. And she's like, I've been known to kind of, dabble a little bit. But the fact of the matter is I think it's neat because they found a kinship in each other because it's like they're both kind of outsiders. It's like the fact of the matter is people kind of, don't see things the way you do. And like the Doctor found kinship in that of being like an outsider. And he's like, yes, I'm totally glad that, you can understand. And I think that's such a neat element between their characters. I thought was kind of, a nice element. But obviously it's kind of sad because like Nikola gets ridiculed because it's just like, oh, all the stuff you're doing is terrible. You're killing people, like people ridiculing him, not understanding what he's doing. Because once again, people have their perspective. He's a man well ahead of his time. It's actually kind of interesting when you actually break down a lot of stuff because I'm not that well versed in Tesla. Like I said, I'm not that big of a history buff. I'm not that big of a science person, so I'm ignorant on the subject. I know a little here and there about Nikola Tesla, but this was like my, this is kind of neat. Really diving into a lot of this stuff, especially because he's explaining some stuff later on, and Ryan's like, wait, he's the one that discovered Wi-Fi. He made Wi-Fi a thing. And it's like, it's crazy to think about all the stuff that he basically because he came up with the term remote control, at least within the confines of this episode. Even like what was it, like drones and stuff. He kind of was basically the person that kind of started the precursor to all that. The thing is that he built up all this knowledge and all this great stuff that eventually people build off of. He had a vision of the future that no one else was able to see. Once again, a man out of time, which kind of fits very perfectly with the Doctor being, a Time Lord out of time, just always all over the place in time. So it's just, there's an interesting mirror parallel that you can make between their characters. So I think that's kind of a pretty neat element. But like I said, it's kind of a bummer that he kind of doesn't get respected and kind of gets ridiculed, in fact. And then he has the whole Edison situation, which obviously that's a little bit of a thing between history that I do know that's a thing. Like Edison and Tesla, like the Edison did steal some ideas from Tesla, because Edison's whole thing was about patents and stuff like that. That was his big thing. I think that's how he made most of his money, was through patents. So obviously, as we see, like for him, like whereas Tesla, it's more of a passion and belief and vision of the future. For Edison, it's a business, and that's how he views it. So he says he never stole any ideas, but you can't. But it's a thing of probably like, oh, I didn't steal this idea. I patented it. This idea that someone else had. It's like I got to it first, so it's like I patented it. So I mean, it seemed like he has like a whole bunch of like scientists and researchers kind of working for him. So it seems like he has smarts of his own. But and it's interesting the parallels that you can make for Edison and the Skithra, the main antagonist of this episode. Is the fact is like, and it's interesting because like basically they were the orb was it's from a different species that uses it to kind of send information. It's kind of like how we have satellites out there, kind of like, what is that thing called? It's something I only recently discovered was a thing, but basically there's like a thing out in space that kind of has like a lot of human I think knowledge and stuff in it, just in case like it ever lands. I think that's a thing. I could be wrong, but it's meant to have all this information that they send to other worlds to let them know, hey, we're out here. But the Skithra reprogrammed it so it can gather information rather than store information, just be a storage device. It was meant to gather information about Earth because they were looking for an engineer, in particular Tesla, because of what made him special is they sent out a signal and he was the only one that noticed the signal, and he actually responded, which the Dr. Leon was like, well, why didn't you say anything? He's like, well, I didn't know it actually worked. I didn't know my response actually made a difference. But I thought that was kind of an interesting element of like, because like I said, Edison seems like he kind of builds off the work of other people and kind of takes all the credit. The Skithra kind of work the same. They literally, their ship, everything that's on it, basically they get people to build, they steal stuff, kind of makeshift it all together and kind of do their own thing with it, and then like take. They take stuff from other people and kind of act like, oh, look at the Skithra engineer, but it's kind of like, no, this is other people's work and stuff and tech that you're using as your own, and using it, so that was even something the Doc was kind of get across. Like the fact of the matter is, you're taking credit for something that is even yours, and when this stuff breaks down, rather than using your own mind to kind of fix it or using your own mind to come up with stuff, you steal stuff from other people and you get someone else to kind of bring it in to kind of like like they were doing with Tesla, bringing him in just to get him to fix it. So like I said, you could definitely see like the parallels to Edison. I mean, granted, Edison's not as bad, I would assume, but it's still that thing of like, for him, I even love that moment where he was talking to Graham and he was like, oh, you have a British accent. He's like, yeah, I do. He's like, oh yeah, that's the British. They're terrible business or something like that. They know nothing about business. He says something. He had some like smart remark like that. It was even interesting when we found out like about his situation with Tesla. Like he had offered Tesla a job, but the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, there's this generator thing. Like if anyone can solve the problem, I'll give them $50,000. But Tesla solved it like a year later. But by the time it came around, he was willing to give Tesla like a $10 raise. That's all he was going to give him. And so Tesla, rather than continue working with him, rather dig ditches, because it's like, oh, I'd rather kind of be at the mercy of making money on my own than rather relying on you, and like you almost are your hands out. And it's almost like, oh, Tesla quit because he couldn't take American humor. Like, and it was like, that's super messed up, super asshole-ish thing. To be fair, the show kind of paints Edison kind of, it's a big douchebag, but to my knowledge, Tesla kind of did douchey things himself. I can never remember. I want to say it was Tesla, the whole killing an elephant thing to test out the electricity and stuff like that. I think that was him. Like I said, history, he wasn't, but I mean, like any human, he made mistakes. But I think that, I don't know. I feel like Edison's still historically more of an asshole than Tesla is, but I could be 100% wrong. But regardless. it was so sad to see like Edison's all his scientists end up getting killed. And even though it seems like he is a bit of an asshole, like the fact of the matter is, for him, he does support the people that he works with. He's talking about the fact is that these are people like he spent time with their families and stuff like that. You know, it's like, I gotta notify their families about these people's death. It's like, that was sad because it's just like in that creature that Skirith got in the middle of everything and just like released that energy and killed everybody. It's also interesting to know, like, that whole thing about, like, oh, they steal other stuff. They also steal people's forms to hide their own, because apparently they're just, like, all, like, giant scorpions. Giant scorpions that can fire lasers from their tail. Well, electricity, but still. Obviously, the queen kind of having a more humanoid form than anybody else. I also think it's kind of interesting that, I guess, because of the circumstances, she never felt like taking on a human form, while others ended up doing. Because I guess it's like, I'm here to kind of do my thing. I'm here to kind of kill you myself. So it's like, I don't need a disguise, you know, that type of situation. But regardless. I also like the parallel that's set up between Dorothy and basically Ryan, Yaz, and Graham, because the fact of the matter is, it's like, you know, because Dorothy can kind of understand, because Ryan is like, oh yeah, basically I'm from, you know, like, I just, you know, worked a regular job, and then I met the doctor, and then she showed me all these crazy things, and Dorothy was like, I did the exact same thing. I came here just to kind of get, like, a decent job, and, you know, a normal life. But then, like, the fact of the matter is, you know, Tesla, he showed me all these wonderful things, and for her, it's like, it was a thing of, like, such a crazy and extraordinary life that she wouldn't trade for anything. She wouldn't trade it for a normal life, you know, and I thought that was kind of, you know, that was kind of a neat parallel that was kind of created between them. Obviously, everyone's reaction to, you know, being inside of the TARDIS and everything, and Edison not being able to figure it out. But I love that the moment Tesla walks in, he's like, oh, like, basically referencing how, like, it has different dimensions on the inside than the outside, kind of referencing the fact that it is a different dimension on the inside. And she's like, correct. It's like showing you that, like, Edison couldn't figure it out, but Tesla could, showing you just kind of the difference within their minds, and just like showing you how smart Tesla is, you know. I also love when the doctor was going to teleport up to the ship and everything. And she's like, yeah, it's going to take a little while to charge, but I'm not worried about it. You guys shouldn't be worried about it. She's like, I'm perfectly, like, totally not worried about it. I love her false kind of confidence, but then she kind of teleports up to the ship. All she has to do is kind of keep them distracted long enough while, you know, the device ended up charging up. But obviously, the Skithra queen is saying that, like, if they don't give Tesla back, she's going to destroy the entire planet and kind of basically kill every human. And obviously for Tesla, it's like, the fact of the matter is, you can't put that burden on me. It'd be my life over the whole world. You know, it's like a lot to kind of put on his shoulders. And for her, I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation, because for her, she kind of, you know, jokes a little bit with him. It's like, oh, you finally got the recognition you wanted. And it's like, also, you can tell it's pissing off Edison how much they want you and not him. Because for him, like, he decided not to work on any of their devices, because it's like, yeah, it was, you know, it's like, the wonderment was there and it's amazing, but for him, it's like, he wants to work on stuff that's a betterment and something that's not going to be used to hurt and to kill others. So for him, he wanted to make something that, you know, like I said, benefit the future, to help people, you know, expand the world, essentially, especially expand the connections between people, you know. So that's what he wanted to work for. So it's just kind of like, okay, so you guys need to get out of here. I'm gonna turn myself over to him. And doctor's like, no, and he's like, no, and she's like, no. The fact of the matter is, you've got, you know, a bright future that's going to change the world, and for right now, how about let's start with saving the world. And so them kind of working together in many different regards, whether, you know, it's like with that machine of his, they're going to, like, charge up electricity in it and kind of shoot it into the ship and everything. I thought it was pretty dope. It was just an interesting aspect of just kind of everything kind of like coming together, this plan of like using the TARDIS as shield to kind of block everything. But to fire up the cannon, they're going to need to drop the shields for like 30 seconds to kind of fully power everything up. So, but then the queen came down herself because she wanted to kill them personally. In particular, she wanted to kill the doctor personally. But I did like that line where the Skithra queen was kind of like, oh, have you ever seen a world burn? And she was kind of like, I've more than you can think. I mean, obviously she recently saw her world. Let's not forget, literally last episode they were dealing with an orphan planet. So she's come across enough worlds like that, you know, for her to know what an orphan planet was prior to all that too. So it's like, yeah, she's seen enough worlds that have been burned. So it's like, but she wasn't obviously going to let Earth become another one, and obviously wasn't going to let Tesla sacrifice himself. So zap the queen back up there, and then like fire the laser. So it was just kind of short her out, and because of the whole hive mind, it's like her being taken down leads everyone to taken out. So the ship ends up leaving because of all of that. It's kind of sad that not only with his inventions, but just every avenue of all of this is that when it's all said and done, Tesla will never get the recognition for what he did. Edison knows what he did, but probably will never be like, oh man, like look how great Tesla is. It's kind of like, nope. Because even him being like, oh, you should work with me, because it was even something Graham had said. The fact of the matter is, you want him to work for you again. He's like, what would make you think that? He's like, I had basically a boss like you. The fact of the matter is, you wouldn't keep such a close eye on Tesla if you weren't kind of being like, oh, some of the stuff he's coming up with is interesting. So you're gonna you see a business opportunity there, and you're not gonna let like such an opportunity pass you up. But obviously Tesla turns him down, and there's almost like this competitive rivalness, like almost this level of equal competitive rivalness that they kind of have at the end of the episode. But I still think it's kind of that thing of Edison still kind of thinking of himself better than Tesla. But for him, it's like, hey, you stick to your guns, you stick to your vision, because if he worked for Edison, it just turned into like, it's like Edison would kind of bend it wouldn't be the future that he wanted to create. It kind of be through Edison's lens rather than his own. So, and it's actually kind of sad through it all, because he asked us like, oh, did history change? It's like, nope, nothing actually changed history wise. Like, despite knowing what he knows, like Tesla is going to end up kind of poor. Like, he's still going to die never like being recognized for his work, even though his work leads to the future changing forever. He is the founding father to what a lot of we know, and so that will never change. But obviously he'll never get the recognition for it. It's kind of a bummer, but it's like, because the fact of the matter is, like, history might kind of end up forgetting his name, but the impact he had on this world can't be forgotten. You see it in every little avenue of life, and it's a bittersweet thing of just like the whole sad situation with history. So I meant to bring this up at the beginning of the episode. The actor who plays Tesla, I couldn't remember his character's name, but it's Garcian Flynn from Timeless. I couldn't remember his character's name. It was bugging me the entire episode, which is just interesting. Like, oh, a science fictional time travel show, Timeless. I highly recommend you check out Timeless. It's a really good show. I really appreciate the fact that it was able to kind of have a finale. Going on a tangent, but it's just interesting for him to be in another like science fictional time travel show. I think it's pretty dope. So. But yeah, I love him being like, oh, you should let me study basically the TARDIS sometimes. And she's like, no, you got enough wonderment here. And he's like, exactly. And I like that. It's like, keep doing what you're doing despite what anyone says. And he's like, I know. Like, he's like, the present belongs to them, but the future is mine. I was like, I like that. It's like I said, it's very like in its entirety, it's a very inspirational episode. To kind of, like I said, never lose sight of your goals, even when others kind of say like, oh, you're stupid, you're crazy. Why would you? It's a great example of despite what people say, and keep going your way, your path, your vision, and you never know how it can what kind of ripples it might have, so I don't know. I thought it was a pretty neat episode in that regard, though. But I'm very interested to see, ultimately where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time with me, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.